right. Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm Kelsey Mora. I'm the Chief Clinical Officer for Pickles Group. We have a few folks here already, but we'll get started at 6 Central. And so we'll just wait for people to arrive. We've got our panelists and our moderator here ready to share lots of important and sensitive information. And so we're just so grateful for the time and the discussion in honor of Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month, which was in March, but it's April 1st. We're still honoring all year long. And so grateful for all of you who are here. We'll just give everyone time to enter. Thank you so much. If you're in a position and you want to share where you're joining from, I see we have some people from Illinois. Cassie and I from Pickles Group are both in California and the Chicagoland area. So splitting different time zones, and then you'll hear from all of our panelists. We are partnering with Fight CRC, Man Up to Cancer, and Colorectal Cancer Alliance on this incredible offering. And we have Dr. Shruti Patel from Stanford University moderating our panel as well. All right, welcome everyone. I'm Kelsey Mora, the Chief Clinical Officer at Pickles Group. I see we have people entering. I know that everyone is managing their families and their healthcare and their jobs, and so appreciate those of you who are joining live, and I'm sure more people will be joining shortly. We also are recording this, so it will be shared with all of the registered participants as well as on our YouTube channel after the program. So thank you so much for being here in honor of Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month. I am Kelsey Mora. I'm a dual certified child life specialist and therapist. So I'll be talking about how to talk to kids about colorectal cancer, and then you will hear from families, parents, and kids directly on their lived experience. And we have Dr. Shruti Patel here tonight to moderate that panel discussion as well. So I want to be mindful of time, so I'll go ahead and get us started as people are trickling in. But this webinar and panel is being offered in collaboration with Fight Colorectal Cancer, Colorectal Cancer Alliance, and Man Up to Cancer. So you will receive a PDF of these slides with more information about all of those respective organizations, and you will hear about all of those organizations through the panel as well, because each panelist is representing one of our 4 organizations to be able to share what resources they've benefited from or appreciated, and then how they want to share those options with other families as well. So before I jump in, I always like to share a little bit more about Pickles Group. For any of you who are new to our organization, it can be helpful context in terms of how I'm approaching this topic. So we are a nonprofit that provides free peer-to-peer support and resources for kids and teens impacted by their parent or caregiver's cancer. And we do that in 3 main ways. So we have taken the research, there's not enough of it, we're working on more, but to really determine what kids need when they're facing their parents' cancer. And what the existing research shares is that kids need honest and age-appropriate information, coping skills, and peer connection. And so all of the programming at Pickles Group that we provide and offer is rooted in those 3 pillars to make sure that kids have what they need to cope and thrive through their parents' cancer diagnosis. I'm going to talk about developmental responses. We at Pickles Group, our youth programming is typically for 6th through 18 or 1st through 12th grade, but we recognize that families can have kids that span different age ranges, and we have some of our panelists who have navigated the cancer conversation at very different ages, including some of the youngest ages, and so you'll hear about that as well. So I'll talk about infancy through adolescence. We'll also take a closer look at our Family Cancer Support Kit, which is a free resource that you'll have access to after this webinar, but also it's available for hospitals and for families to request. We ship them all over the map to make sure that families receive that valuable resource at the time when they need it most. And then we'll turn it over to our family panel and discussion being moderated by Dr. Shruti Patel from Stanford University. And last but not least, you'll also hear a little bit more about those partner organizations and resources that we're so grateful to be working on this event together. So I'll go ahead and get us started with these developmental responses. So I'm going to start with the littlest one. So infants and toddlers. Often that's the age group that we might think they're too little to understand or they won't remember. And I'm sure you'll hear from some of our parents on the call who have navigated some really hard things with toddlers. So when kids are little and they're curious and they pick up on the changes in their environment, and so it can be really helpful to start those conversations early and often, knowing that they may continue for many years, or kids may see photos of a time when treatment was more active, or there may be medical equipment that extends lifelong, even after active treatment. And so helping toddlers and infants begin to understand what's happening in their environment and why can be really important. And then it can build on it over time as they get older. Preschoolers are sometimes perhaps an even harder age because they are so curious and they understand more, but they're often relating it to what's familiar to them. So when we think about a sickness, preschoolers are often thinking about a cold or germs. They're being taught to cough in their elbow or to blow their nose. And so it's really helpful to help preschoolers understand that cancer is a different type of sickness. This is also the age group when they might be potty training or toileting or building more confidence with toileting, whether that's at home or outside of the home. And so when we're talking specifically about colorectal cancer, some of those topics about body functions and body systems can be something you're already talking about in a different way. And so finding a way to help that familiar language, but also distinguish how things are different when navigating the cancer diagnosis. Preschoolers also experience a lot of magical thinking. So they may be asking or thinking things that are really far from the truth. This is the age of princesses and unicorns and pirates and all of that magical experiences. And so having really honest, concrete language about cancer can actually help them understand more. Because if we're using words that are kind of vague or ambiguous, they might really expand their imagination in a way that causes more confusion or even fear. And then elementary age. So this is an age group that we see a lot of, and we have Mallory here tonight on our panel, who is 10. And so hearing about, thanks for waving, Mallory, hearing about her current experience navigating this at her age. And so kids have more understanding. They know what's going on, but they still may have misinformation depending on where they're getting their information from. They may need help navigating the information that's available to them. And so having that honest, open communication with parents can be really helpful for kids. They may not want to talk about it all the time, but they want to know that when they need to or when they want to, that they can, and to know that that they can ask their questions when they have them. So that age group can be really important. And that's why at Pickles Group, we're creating peer spaces where kids can meet other kids who have a parent with cancer, so that maybe if there's a question they didn't feel comfortable asking at home, they can ask it in the group. We have something called Phone a Pickles Friend, where often kids are asking questions that they haven't had a chance to ask someone else. And so being able to do that in a safe space, and then we provide honest, age-appropriate language to all of the kids in the group, and parents and caregivers are able to see what's coming up for kids. And those questions can be pretty surprising and pretty also inspiring to see, what kids are thinking about. They're often very thoughtful and very insightful and just need that guidance to make sense of what what cues they're picking up on and trying to make sense of. And then last but not least, adolescents or teenagers. So this age group is kind of another forgotten age group sometimes, because we might assume that they know more than they understand. And you're also going to hear we have Caroline on the call, who is a young adult who has navigated the cancer diagnosis during adolescence, and so being able to share that lived experience as well, because teenagers do understand more, and they may even help in more of a caregiving role, or their roles and responsibilities in the family may shift and change, but they're also still focused on school and focused on friendships and focused on their interests and their hobbies and their talents. And so helping teenagers find that balance to be able to live their existing life while also slotting into responsibilities that might be necessary, and giving them that outlet and that safe space to share how they feel about those things, because it can be sensitive and emotional. And while they're capable of a lot, their brains are still developing and they have big emotions too. And so remembering that, while teenagers may understand more, they may still need that honesty and that relationship to know that I can still talk about how I feel about this, or have a place to go when things get really hard. They're also trying to figure out, how do I talk to my friends about this? I'm at a soccer game and my friends are seeing a change in my family, and I might want the words to help explain that to them. And so our teenagers do ask a lot of big questions about, what have you told your friends? Or how do you want to be treated by your friends? Or, what do you do when this happens at prom, or things like that? And so helping teenagers have that space to talk about typical social relationships and experiences and how they're impacted by having a parent with cancer. So this is our family cancer support kit. It is available in both English and Spanish. Like I said, it is completely free and available, not even nationwide, globally. We have had requests from all over the world. And so this is something that can be requested and provided either at the bedside to patients and families, or to your own family. If you are joining us as a family looking for more resources, you will receive a copy after this webinar. But if you're someone who wants the hard copy, you can also request to have one mailed to you. So the 3 guiding tips that are in this cancer support kit for talking to kids about cancer are: share information, share expectations, and share feelings. So I'm going to take each of those tips and break them down in a little more detail and apply that specifically to more of a colorectal cancer experience, which then you'll be able to hear about more during our panel. We are going to be providing a lot more resources in the coming year, these months coming, about kind of the ongoing conversations that may happen with more advanced cancer. And so that's something we've gotten a lot of requests for, and we've had topics on different challenging conversations that are available on our YouTube channel. But we're really looking forward to having those resources available when families are at different stages and phases of their cancer experience. So you will hopefully see in the near future a resource that is similar to this one, but for maybe more advanced conversations that could come in a cancer diagnosis. So we'll start with sharing information. So a lot of parents might ask, like, when do I do this? What do I share? And I'm sure all of the families on our panel will have different stories about how they navigated those early conversations. So whether you are at the start of a diagnosis, or changing of treatment, or preparing for a surgery, think of each of these conversations as their own conversation. It is a lot of bite-sized conversations. It's usually not one big conversation. And so focusing on what kids really need to know right now, what's happening right now, what are they seeing, what are they observing. Some families choose to share what they know as soon as they know it, and some families choose to wait for more information. You know your kids best. Sometimes kids are really curious and they might be asking, where have you been going? Or why aren't you feeling well? And it may cause more worry to not understand why. And so talking about that sooner, even if you don't have all of the information, could be helpful. Or waiting and then sitting down and having a bigger conversation of, like, we've been waiting for more information and we have that now. So we want to be able to tell you what's been going on. And every family is a little bit differently. But regardless, starting with what they need to know and then building on what they want to know. So that might be, what questions do they have? What are their concerns? What have they overheard? What have they seen? And then building on that. And also, so when it comes to colorectal cancer specifically, there's a lot of other things that need to be explained. So we explain cancer as a problem with the cells and talk about it as a different kind of sickness. So that helps kids know that it's not a germ, it's not contagious, you can't catch it, but also that a parent may appear or seem sicker before they get better. And that can be really confusing because treatment is really long and it is really intense. And for colorectal cancer specifically, there may be a lot of changes in bowel habits. There may be ostomies, colonoscopies. There may be nutritional changes with the gastrointestinal system. So being able to explain to kids the gastrointestinal system to start, and then building on how that's affecting their loved one's body, can be really helpful. So as a child life specialist, I'm often getting out anatomy toys and showing kids the intestines and really talking about poop and bowel movements and different body parts. And I think you'll hear from families tonight, like for some families that might be more natural and more comfortable depending on your child's age or even gender or how you approach those topics in your home. And for some families that might feel really taboo and private and uncomfortable. And so that can be an added challenge of thinking about how to talk about these bodily functions that are typically more shameful or private, and being able to help normalize that for your family. But breaking it down in a really scientific way is usually the best way for kids to process the information. So cancer is a problem with the cells. The cancer cells are located in my rectum. My rectum looks like this. Show them with the anatomy. It's on this part of my body. It does this, right? And so pointing out all of those different functions. Here's what the doctors are going to do. First, they're going to take the cells, and that's going to change the way my intestines work, or things like that. So helping explain stepwise what they need to know. Kids are also egocentric, which is kind of a fancy way of saying self-centered, but it's not meant to be negative. It's really just how they see the world. They're seeing the world from their perspective. Wait a minute, how's this going to affect me? Oh, you said you have a surgery on Thursday. Well, that's the day of my soccer game, right? And so helping them make sense of how this is going to affect them, which may mean that they ask questions that are really surprising and maybe not the first thing that you would think of. And so when possible, just listening first will help you kind of clue into what are they thinking about or worrying about, because it may be different than what you're thinking about. And ultimately, when you feel overwhelmed by the details and what to say and how to say it, focusing on just opening the lines of communication. So much of this is about building trust with your kids. And I think you'll hear about that from a lot of the families tonight, is that, there's no perfect conversation, but it's about kids feeling safe and trusting that they can talk about anything, even if it's hard. And last but not least, I don't know is also a real answer. If a kid asks a really hard question or you don't have all the information, you might find yourself saying, like, that's a great question. I don't know, but as soon as I do know, we'll talk about it. Or let's find out together. And helping even older kids understand how to research safely, because they will research. And so helping them do so safely can be really important. So I know I spent a bit more time on that one, but that is definitely a big one in terms of sharing information. I'll pivot to sharing expectations. So now that maybe we've had those initial conversations, whether that's about diagnosis or treatment or surgery or recovery, helping kids prepare for the changes. And a lot of times when navigating cancer, we feel like there are only changes and that everything is different. And there's, of course, some truth to that. It really, turns your world upside down, and nothing is ever exactly the same. But there are some things that are the same. And so helping kids understand, you're still going to go to school, but the person that takes you is going to be different, right? Or we're going to start taking the bus. So here's what's going to be the same. Here's what's going to be different. And talking about, I have some planned doctor's visits, and sometimes there's some unplanned visits, like if something changes, right? And that helps them navigate the unexpected, because there will be some things that we can't prepare or predict or plan. And so the more that kids understand what's coming, then if something changes, they can handle more of, remember how we talked about this? Well, there's been a change, rather than feeling like you have to start over and explain everything all at once. You can kind of build on what they already know and explain even the change and the transition and the reason. So helping kids expect those changes and understanding why and how it's going to affect them. Knowing that there will be a lot of changes, and there are a lot of changes, it can also help to give kids a sense of control back. This feels really out of control for you as a parent or as a family member. And so thinking about, for a child, everything feels different. The person that typically drives me is not able to. The person that typically cuddles me before bed is in the hospital. Everything is kind of different right now. Or I have to hug you different because your body's sore, or you're taking a lot of trips to the bathroom and I just want to play catch outside, right? And so everything feels different and changed. And so helping kids with some sense of control, and that can be done through giving some simple choices. It could be choices about the cancer specifically, how involved they want to be, how they want to help, what they want to know, if they want to FaceTime, if they want to visit, or it might be just random choices. Like, do you want to do your homework now or before dinner or after dinner? Do you want the blue cup or the red cup? Just giving them something to hold on to that feels steady and stable and predictable when everything else feels really chaotic. And the other piece of this is trying to maintain some structure and stability as much as possible. So it's really natural as a parent, when your child is hurting and things are hard, to want to maybe loosen up on rules or expectations. But ideally, there comes a time when the cancer is more stable or things are more steady. And it can be really hard to recover when so much has been different. And so trying to keep things as similar as possible can be really helpful for kids. And it also gives them a sense of purpose and stability. Like, I know that my job is to go to school and my job is to play with my friends and my job is to the one thing that's changed is my parents have asked me to do more of this because it's helpful, and that's okay. But I still have to focus on making sure my homework gets done or things like that. It gives them that clarity about here's my role in this, here's what's needed, and here's what's the same for me. And often school and activities and jobs can be something that is consistent and predictable and kind of feels normal when everything else feels chaotic. So that can be really important. And then last but not least, sharing feelings. So this can be really natural or unnatural, depending on how your family in general approaches feelings and sensitive topics. And we have done this webinar in centering the experience of different cultures and backgrounds, recognizing that there are a lot of nuances to all of our identity and how we approach these topics. And so it's not a one size fits all, but from a child development lens and what kids tend to benefit from is knowing that all emotions are okay. There's common things that we say as parents, like, I just want my kids to be happy or I want to keep them in a bubble. And the reality is that we can't always, right? We can't control these hard things happening and coming their way. And we wish they didn't have to face it when they're young. And so helping them know that it's okay to be happy, it's okay to have joy, it's okay to play and laugh. It's also okay to have hard moments and hard days and to cry and to share your feelings. And as natural or unnatural it may be for you or for us as an adult, when we model that, that's kind of the best way for kids to learn. Like when they see, okay, it's my mom is telling me she's having a hard day, and that's okay. Then it helps them have permission to have a hard day or to have a hard moment too. And sometimes kids do worry, like it feels weird to play and laugh when my dad is going through so much. And so, also on the flip side of normalizing that it's okay to laugh and play and experience joy. And I know Bill on our panel is probably going to share about all the ways that his illness and condition has not been limiting in his life. And I think that's been a really important lesson to model for his family as well. One way to do that is to increase communication by saying, I feel blank, naming that emotion because stating maybe what's contributing to it and your plan. What's your plan? What's your solution? What do you need? So that could look like, I feel sad because dad's in the hospital and I'm going to call and talk to him. I'm going to make him a card. Or I feel overwhelmed because I'm trying to schedule a lot of doctor's appointments and I'm going to take a breath of fresh air outside. And so that gets us to the coping skills, so which is a big part of Pickles Group, which is helping kids have the tools and the skills to navigate these challenges. And I always say these are life skills. We can use them for when a parent has cancer, and we can use them for when a math test doesn't go the way you hoped for. And so being able to embrace those feelings and kind of have those tools that work for different people, and recognizing that everyone copes different. Someone may be more tearful, someone may be more physical, someone may be more reflective. And even within the same family, you might have a kid who is very physical and needs to run and play and be active. And you may have another kid who's maybe more artistic and creative and reflective. And so recognizing that no one copes the same, and really even normalizing that within the family, and having that downtime. I talk a lot about the nervous system, and when going through cancer, there's a lot of that like on edge feeling. What's going to happen next? Like, what's today going to bring? And so really building those practices around how do we settle? How do we have brief moments of calm, whether that's through movement or breath or getting outside or playing. And that builds that connection too within the family, knowing that we can feel close even when things are hard. And so that's the third tip for the three tips for talking to kids about cancer. So we talked about sharing information, sharing expectations, and sharing feelings. This is all in our family cancer support kit. It's something we talk about a lot, and it's something we've really woven intentionally into our youth programming, curriculums, and activities as well. So now I'm going to stop talking because I want you all to hear from the real experts who are living this day in and day out. We have a group of incredible panels who have offered to share their time with us tonight and represent different organizations that we're so grateful for. And before I do that, I also want to introduce our moderator. So we have Dr. Shruti Patel, who is a clinical assistant professor of medicine and gastrointestinal medical oncology at Stanford University. She completed her internal medicine residency at the Mayo Clinic and fellowship at Stanford, where she served as chief fellow. Her clinical and research interests center on early onset gastrointestinal cancers, translational immunotherapy, and health equity in cancer care. She currently serves on the board of directors of the Association of Northern California Oncologists, and her work has been published in various medical journals. Outside the clinic, Dr. Patel is passionate about science, communication on social media, loves traveling to new places, and reading at a cafe with a good latte. So I'm sure I have gotten to know and appreciate Dr. Patel. I'm so grateful for your time and your passion about supporting young families. And I'm sure that many people here listening would love to have a latte with you and pick your brain and get to know you. So I'm going to close the presentation and turn it over to you to kick off our panel discussion.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kelsey and Pickles Group, for having me. Open latte invitation to anybody on this call at all times. But kind of in all seriousness, like Kelsey said, I'm a GI medical oncologist. I take care of patients with colorectal cancer, but also other gastrointestinal cancers. And a big part of my practice includes younger patients, many of whom are parents of young kids. So it's something that actually comes up in clinic quite a bit. And one of the things that I see over and over again in clinic is we spend a lot of time talking about treatments and side effects. And there's this whole other layer that patients are navigating at home, which is how to talk to their children about a cancer diagnosis, which is where groups like Pickles Group really come in. And it's one of the hardest parts, I think, of the experience because there's no script for it. And so I'm really grateful to be part of this discussion. That's my little prelim monologue. But to get us started, I'm going to love to introduce our panel. So I'm going to ask each of our panelists to briefly share what organization you're representing, and of course, a little bit about your experience with cancer as a parent or as a child. So I'm going to start with Greg, Holly, and Mallory, please.
My name is Greg, and I live in northern Minnesota with my wife Holly and my 10-year-old daughter Mallory. In 2004, I was diagnosed with stage 3C colorectal cancer, and so we've been through a lot together. Pickles Group was something that Mallory found especially helpful for the peer support and some coping strategies she learned along the way. So that's what brought us here.
Yeah. And so it has been since 2024. So we're still kind of in a little bit of that transition time. I will just say the first 6 months of it, when we first got the diagnosis, we had also moved across the country. Our daughter was starting a new school. We were adjusting to a new area. And it would have been nice to have the Pickles Group at the time. We're grateful for the Mayo Clinic that they shared this information with us about 6 months later when I had asked. And so that really helped us. But what we did know is that there was a lot of different strategies that we knew what we didn't want to do, and that was lie to our child or cover it up or not present information. And we've always had a rule that Mallory will never get in trouble for asking a question, saying a bad word if she's just seeking understanding. And that was kind of our rule, even with this latest diagnosis too. So.
Thank you so much for sharing that and kind of the nuance of those 6 months and what that looked like and how different it looked after you had kind of some support. So thank you for that, and we'll definitely get back to it. Bill, can I call on you next?
Sure. My name is Bill Tutt. I am from Houston, Texas, and representing Man Up to Cancer. I was diagnosed back in November 2018 with stage 3 neuroendocrine carcinoma of the rectum. I'm still in active treatment right now. I've been through 10 lines of treatment, and I'm going to be starting my 5th clinical trial. Going through cancer, especially my daughter was only about a year and a half when I got diagnosed. And the thing with her is she kind of saw the evolution of cancer care as well as my journey as a patient. So just allowing her just to help how she thought was best was very helpful as well. And then as she's gotten older, she's 8, going to be 9 now. She's being a lot more curious in terms of asking questions. So I'm also a double ostomate. So that conversation was very early on. But at the same time, it was a lot easier just because kids like poop and pee. So it was an easier conversation at the time. So like there isn't any question that is awkward for her to ask me just because I want to be transparent with her.
Awesome. Yeah, no, just with her being so young, right? When you were diagnosed, must have been a big part of like the evolution of how you were open with her, which helped her being open back with you and kind of have that back and forth.
Yeah, and then on top of that, seeing me be able to do normal things as a regular adult, kind of showed that even going through all that struggle, you could still have a normal life.
Absolutely. Well, absolutely. And again, I'm gonna pick your brain about that a bit more later. Can I call on Carolyn next, please?
Hi everyone, my name is Caroline. Currently, I go to college in Washington, D.C., but when I'm not at school, I'm at home in Florida with my family, and my mom's also on the panel. I am the child of a cancer survivor. My dad was diagnosed with stage 3 rectal cancer when he was 47. I was 11 years old. It was a very shocking diagnosis and the year of treatments and surgeries. And just a really rough patch. But it's been 8 years. And so tonight I'm here on behalf of Fight CRC, an organization that really helped me turn my pain into purpose. And I just hope to bring hope. If you're a young kid on this call going through it, that you'll get through it and life will get better. And hopefully you'll find some passion and joy out of this.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. I'm gonna uh, now call on your mom, Teresa. If I could go, you get you to introduce yourself next.
I'm Teresa Mashpee, Caroline's mom. Same story. My husband was diagnosed in 2018. It was shocking. He did have signs and symptoms. His GI ordered a colonoscopy. At the time, though, the screening age was still 50, not 45. And at the time, our kids were 11, 13, and 15. So it was a whole lot to digest. I'm here on behalf of Fight Colorectal Cancer. No one fights alone. And honestly, finding your community is so important. And the people that we have found in the last 8 years have been the absolute silver lining of such a horrible disease.
Thank you so much. Totally agree. You don't fight alone, and just having these kind of communities so important. And then, last but not least, Brianna, can I have you introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, hi. Thanks everyone for joining us. My name's Brianna. I live in Seattle, Washington, and I was diagnosed with stage 4 rectal cancer in 2018, just about a week before my twin sons turned 3 years old. So they were quite young, toddlers going into preschool, and have a unique perspective of, it was kind of bittersweet in terms of their naivete around what was going on, and talking to them now that they're 11, about to be 11, this month, and looking back and reflecting on what worked, and yeah, I think what worked, which
I
is
like
good.
that.
So, yeah, I am very fortunate to be just reached 7 years of no evidence of disease, and I'm here representing the Colorectal Cancer Alliance. I got involved with the organization through my survivorship journey, and really found it helpful also to connect with community and other patients, other survivors, other young moms that were going through the disease, and have that camaraderie and navigating and solidarity and space to compare and contrast and support one another.
Yeah. What I'm hearing, in everybody's introduction is community plus open honesty, communication. And those are kind of like the two big things that I hope to that we can dive into with these questions. So I'm going to start off the conversation with a kind of general question, which is when colorectal cancer first became a part of your family's story, how was it explained to the kids in the family? And Teresa, maybe I'll start with you. I'll pick on you, and then we can kind of go from there.
Sure. So my husband went for a colonoscopy and they couldn't even complete it because they found a tumor in his rectum. And the GI came in and we went from talking and laughing to the curtain closing around us and him saying, "You have cancer." And it was just like your world is shattered in a way that you can't possibly imagine. And we were devastated and we listened to what he had to say and we got in the car and we cried on the way home. And we got home and I said, stay in the garage. And, he's the strong, you know, and I said, stay in the garage and let me just go in and tell the kids. Cause our kids are always like, happy colonoscopy, welcome home. Like they celebrate everything. And
Right.
so I left him in the garage and I came in and I said, look, dad had a colonoscopy. We don't know anything other than his GI said it is almost, positive that it's cancer. And I don't know anything right now. I don't know where we're starting. I don't know where we're going, but I promise you this, please stay off Google. Don't look up anything and let us just explain to you as we learn. And I promise we will tell you everything good, bad, and ugly the whole way as we move along. But right now, we don't know anything. And that was hard. That was hard to not have that power, not have that knowledge. But also the good part, I think, of it was such a raw conversation of just not knowing. And when we would know, they would know. And we were honest the entire time. Like there was never anything we hid at any point.
Do you mind, Carolyn, if I kind of ask you about how, if you remember kind of how you remember that conversation, as the cheerleaders of the welcome home from the colonoscopy, maybe how that went?
Yes. Yeah. We growing up, we always would do these like welcome home signs after like someone was traveling for work or whatever. And to be honest, I don't remember much leading up to the day. I just remember that there had been enough anticipation for us to be like, oh, it's an important doctor's appointment. And I remember just opening the garage door with our little signs, and looking at my dad's face, and he wasn't driving, which is enough of a tell. And my parents had both looked like they'd just been crying, and I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Um, and yeah, my parents came in the house and they pretty much immediately sat us on the couch and they basically said, Dad has cancer. We don't know anything else. We'll be honest with you if you have questions. And I just remember my mom being so strict of do not Google it. This is a one, he's not a statistic, he's a person. Don't Google it. Don't scare yourself. Try not to get too anxious yet. We don't really know. And I remember being really curious the whole time and just like always wondering like what's the treatment going to look like? What's the stage? And we didn't have any answers. But as my parents went to appointments and kind of figured things out, they always shared with us. At first, like his first treatment plan was to get surgery first, and then as it changed, they told us, okay, he's going to get chemo then. And that was really helpful. And yeah, so honestly, it was just, I remember not knowing much and then just kind of getting filled in little details as we went. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. It's really helpful to hear that kind of from both sides. So I really
Mhm.
appreciate you sharing that. I would ask any of our other panelists who want to share, what that looked like, how it was explained.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. Like I mentioned, my kids were super young, and so it wasn't like a upfront, candid, sit down conversation. And it was really ambiguous to explain to them around, where I had an owie because it was invisible. And that's the language that we used because that was what they could relate to. And it was super confusing that you couldn't see an owie that normally as a young kid you would be putting a band-aid on. And my cousin, earlier in the session, Kelsey was talking about like visual aids, and it reminded me, I went and got this. My cousin had sent me this like pillow, and my kids, I have this memory of them walking around, they're just like learning to talk kind of basic sentences, but they would stuff this guts pillow under their like sweatshirt and walk around the house as little toddlers, just being like, my guts. And,
I love
using some silly anatomy just to try and teach them or show them like where things were happening or what was going on. Um, I think also once I had a port and I had chemo infusions and would come home with a port and get 48 hours of chemo following the infusion in the cancer center. that they could visibly like see that I was getting medicine, but that was also really confusing because normally medicine in their mind makes you feel better, and this medicine made me feel like crap. We get the permission to use all the poop talk words in this scenario. So, um, but yeah, that just I think helping to see that something was going on and to explain what was wrong and visualize that there were owies happening and being treated. But it was really challenging to explain things to that specifically young age. But yeah, again, being very open and candid about conversations, I think is very helpful no matter the age and sets that precedent being really open and talking about poop and bodily functions and embracing that as young boys are curious and there's no shame in those conversations, and that has continued all the way through to their adolescence. But that was just the intro story.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing. I agree. Those organ plushies are amazing. Any like animation of,
Yeah.
the GI tract is really helpful for visualization. So definitely, I think it's adorable that they were they played with
I,
it.
Yeah, and I'll also just add, it was a time when we were reading a lot of books, and I wasn't aware of any books at that time that would be helpful, but I am now, and so I'm going to add them in the chat. There's a couple of like kids books that are specific to guts and gut function and gut health, and I think could be a great tool for families, visual aid, if you will. And another one that's a story, like an animated story about a father who's going through colorectal cancer. So I'm going to add those into the chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then I want to hear everyone's story and then we can kind of go into the more detailed. So Greg, if I could call on you, is that okay? The
Yeah,
question
just
just
want to make
again
sure you're
was
unmuted. Yeah. Um, I would say our story is similar to other people in that instead of a one-time big presentation where we were going to explain everything to Mallory, we gave her tidbits of stuff as they came up and encouraged questions along the way. And when, I'm going to do chemotherapy now, here's what that means and here's what it might look like. But we don't know. We'll find out together, kind of thing. What
Yeah.
do you remember about it, Mallory?
I remember you two going to a doctor's visit, and I went at one of the grandparents' houses, and then you came back, and Mama told me it was more serious than we thought. And I asked, can I have a day to prepare? And then you can tell me tomorrow. Um, and the next day, Mama told me, we were sitting in the sunroom, and she told me, your dad has cancer, and here's what that is. It's not something that you can catch. It's in the area that does this, and this is what it might look like. We don't know if he's going to make it. There's no guarantees in this. We're just going to hope and try our best.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Mallory. Really appreciate hearing it from, how your parents did it and how you heard it. And I also just want to take a moment to say, wow, like what foresight for you to say, hey, I think I need a day, right? Just to say, Mom and Dad, I need a day. And then I'm going to sit in the sunroom with you in a place that's safe for us and hear about it. So hats off to you, Mallory. Really.
Yeah, we did that too. We needed a day to process it so we could kind of collectively get our wits out what we wanted to do. So that way the message was a little bit more clear. So yeah, it was that bite-sized piece. And yeah, it was probably the hardest conversation I've ever had to do in my life. So
I believe that. I believe that. I'm so happy that you were able to have that conversation despite the difficulty, of course.
yeah.
And Mallory's grace clearly in being able to receive that. So thank you. And then I'll lastly call on Bill, and then we can get to the next few questions.
So at the time, my daughter was really young. She was only a year and a half, so it was really hard where we couldn't really communicate with her until she was around 4 or 5.
Yeah.
But during the time when I was getting all the treatments, I was in and out of the hospital a lot and constantly going to appointments. But the thing we did always allow her to do was just allow her to help in her own ways. Like if I would be on the couch, she would bring me a pillow, or she would give me one of her dolls so I could sleep with them. So just giving her that kind of control allowed her to have some sense of control because they see she saw me on the bed, or I was getting extremely skinny, or I was throwing up a lot, or when I finally had the surgery, she saw 2 bags on my stomach. So I was like, there were a lot of things that were just basically left field for her. But over time, she started asking more questions, and I just answered as best as I could. Um, I told her cancer is something that it's going to be with me for the rest of my life, and I'm doing as much possible to keep healthy so I could be resilient enough to endure all these treatments because I'm in treatment for life. So, and she sees that I've been able to do. She always compares me to her friends' parents, where you do so much more than any of my friends' parents, where they can't run marathons, they can't ride a bike that long and that stuff.
Definitely. I was like, neither can I. So I empathize with the friend's parents, but I hear you. That's like tough and at the same time beautiful that you were able to give her some moments of like she brings you her doll or she, that those are really, really important things. And then when she was old enough to talk about, you were really open and honest. So, we're going to pivot a little bit. As we all know, colorectal cancer can involve symptoms and treatments that affect parts of the body that can feel private or uncomfortable to talk about. And so, how has your family navigated talking about those, changes in a way that felt honest, but also comfortable within? And I recognize that different families might have different dynamics within, comfortability talking about these things.
Do you mind if I start?
Yeah.
We had felt, I don't know if it was the town we grew up in or people not minding their own business, but so many people were curious what type of cancer my dad had. And I remember being so embarrassed to say rectal and cancer because when he was diagnosed, I mean, I was 11, I didn't know what a rectum was, I didn't know what it did. And so learning immediately that the type of cancer my dad had was one that dealt with poop. And I was 11. No one wants to talk about that. Like at that point, people think they're cool and, like middle school and whatever.
Sure.
Um, and so I just remember being really embarrassed. If anyone asked me what type of cancer he had, I'd just be like, oh, it's stomach cancer. I didn't want to say rectal or colorectal. And so over his treatment kind of journey and in the years following, my parents really made it a point to say rectal and not, say, because colon is, in my opinion, a little less embarrassing than rectal. And so they really made it a point to say rectal. And after his treatment and his ostomy, they were really honest with us that if your rectum is what holds poop, and when you cut that out and take it away because there's cancer there, he's gonna have to go to the bathroom a lot more often. Because we usually ate family dinner together every night, and so he would have to get up and leave right after we ate, and it was just something that we had to get used to. But kind of knowing why that was happening, and just being honest about the body part that they literally chopped out of him to save his life, I think was helpful, and it helped me and my siblings a lot dealing with outside pressure of or not pressure but kind of stigma because it's hard enough to have to even talk to your friends about your parent fighting cancer, and then when people make jokes about it being butt cancer or something like that, it just feels like another layer to an already stressful situation. So I think it was really helpful that my parents really tried to kind of fight that stigma in our home and being honest with us. So
Can I just
Absolutely.
uh,
Yeah, no, I saw that you unmuted, so you can go and then, but I thank you for sharing that.
one of the hardest things for me is our son confided in like a friend of his that my husband had rectal cancer, and the kid yelled in the middle of a middle school hallway, "Your dad has butt cancer." And he shut down after that, and I said to all three of my kids, like, I will get you therapy for anxiety, like whatever you need. And the girls took me up. They went to a therapist, and my son was like, I have Xbox and that helps me. So in the end, they all found the things that they needed to kind of deal in their own ways. But it was hard. It was hard. He didn't tell me till years later because he didn't want me to be my feelings hurt about it.
Oh. I think the part about stigma is really important, and I think rectal cancer faces that, anal cancer faces that. There's a lot of different, and I think it's so important that you guys are trying to fight it. But even hearing, Caroline, your experience is also really important, because then you maybe, parents on this panel also can know that this might come up, right? And maybe opening up that conversation. Proactively, because maybe they won't tell you till years later because they're trying to protect you too, right? Everybody's in a protection mode for each other. And so, Carolyn, thank you for, Antries, thank you for sharing that. If someone else has like a particularly, you know, important comment, I would love to hear it about, the symptoms and navigating those changes. Otherwise, I'm going to move on to the next question. Let's see.
I would just add on the flip side, especially for younger kids and like that are of or just recently off potty training age, and where that's just, a part of the conversation. And normally you wouldn't think of having bathroom talk at the dinner table, but that's how we've just embraced that. And it's totally tried to normalize that for our family and be open about bathroom habits and changes that they're noticing, and talking openly and sharing that information. Because I know, from others with quite a bit of stigma, not even feeling comfortable with when symptoms were presenting prior to diagnosis, sharing that with their spouse or significant other. And yeah, just really emphasizing how important it is to reframe that and try and minimize the stigma associated with it, and talk about poop and butt and guts and all the things. That's the mission, I think, in terms of raising awareness in general. But I encourage that conversation.
Absolutely. And then Greg, I saw you hit your hand raised, and then we'll go on.
Oh, I was just going to add something along the lines of destigmatizing or having a sense of humor about things. Until just about 2 weeks ago, I too had two ostomies, got an ileostomy reversed, but ileostomy would make lots of noises. And Mallory named the ostomy Trevor, that was from Harry Potter or something.
The Harry Potter frog, Neville's pet frog, that was always getting into trouble.
So Trevor got blamed, even if the dog passed gas or something, Trevor got blamed for it. So
Trevor got blamed for everything. I love that, Mallory. I definitely know Neville's frog or toad, or I don't know what that was, but thank you for sharing that. I wanted to ask everybody one question, kind of piggybacking maybe a little bit on that with the Neville and or Trevor, sorry. Kids often notice things and ask questions that maybe you don't expect. And so perhaps if people can share what kind of questions have come up in your family about the cancer, the body, or the future even, and what have you learned from those conversations that might help other people that are navigating this?
I've got something to share. When we were first navigating a lot of this stuff, the first 5 to 6 months, and we were still very unsure. And Mallory was very careful about confiding in her friends, but she did share with a couple people. And kids at that age don't know. They're doing the best they can with relating. And often she would share with somebody about cancer, and the topic that one of the children or child would come up with is, oh yeah, my grandfather died of cancer. And so what she heard in sharing was death, or the only end. And so having to unwind that, recognizing that we're doing everything we can. We don't know that that's going to be the case. So that's something to be prepared about and really check in. We had kind of a rule to check in every day. And I think that and make sure that is there anything still on your mind and really draw those conversations out. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
No, thank you so much, Holly. Yeah, that's something that is really important and may not be caught, in when we're thinking about all this. Anyone else want to mention some questions that maybe their kids brought up that they didn't really expect?
Not particularly that, but kind of along those lines. I found it really important and helpful just in anticipating that there might be questions or observations or sharing or, language that might come up or stress that might present in like the preschool or kindergarten, first grade, early ages when I was going through treatment and then, even having lots of side effects following treatment. And I felt like it was really important to have some conversations with the educators that my kids were being, supported with, so that if there were conversations like what you had shared, that they or like different reflections that came up or artwork that was drawn, just any kind of just so that they could keep a pulse on it and be aware of what was going on in the home, so that they could give me a heads up so that it could be addressed at home so that they could, if need be, interject at school. And I found that to be really helpful.
When you were talking, I saw a lot of nods, so I think that other people also agree. We are getting close to time, so I'm going to do one final round robin where I want everybody to answer your final kind of one last thought, takeaway that you would want other families facing colorectal cancer to know about talking about kids, with kids about this illness, and or if another kid's parents was diagnosed with cancer. What would you want that kid to know? All right, we're gonna round robin it. So I'm gonna start with Greg, Holly, and Mallory.
I would say kids are smarter than most people give them credit for. So bringing them along the way with the journey. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Next, Bill.
I would say encourage curiosity, just because kids are curious at a very young age, and to inhibit that is detrimental to how they'll be able to cope with your disease as well as their own lives. And when you embrace that, they won't be afraid to move forward in life.
Thank you so much for that. Wow. Brianna.
Yeah, Bill, I echo what you're saying. Thank you so much for putting it so clearly and honesty. And also, they're just really perceptive. Also, the kids are really resilient and they also bring a lot of like good medicine to this process. And I found, the laughter and the joy sometimes when it was going on around me and I was not, I was feeling low, 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 and not knowing what the future would be offering. It was very difficult, but in the same time, it also was very motivating, to get up every day and fight every day. And my kids, I asked them too what they thought or what they advice that they would give other kids, and they just said that they wanted other kids to know that things were gonna be okay. And so I just share that too.
Thank you so much. And then Caroline.
I'd say the biggest thing is don't play Dr. Google. If you have a question, ask your parents. And then echoing what Brianna said, you'll be okay. You'll get through it. It'll be scary and terrible, and you'll wish you didn't have to do it, but you will get through it. And then also don't shove your feelings down, and it's okay to do things you enjoy and to still be a kid and do things that have nothing to do with your parents' cancer diagnosis because they're going through that, but you also have your own life to live. And so you shouldn't feel guilty about doing things you enjoy.
Yeah, hear that, being able to live your own life and know that you still love and support your parents. I love that. And then Teresa, we're going to end with you.
I would echo everybody here. Honest communication is really important, and keeping our kids in their activities and their routines as much as we could was super important. And to live and appreciate every present moment and try not to look too far down the lane.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, all of our panelists. I could have done this for like 2 more hours, honestly. You guys have so much good insight, and I'm sorry we only had this much time, but I really appreciate everything that you guys have shared. I am certain, again, it's going to make me a better doctor, and I'm sure it helped so much our attendees. So thank you so much. And I'm going to turn it back to you, Kelsey.
Thank you so much. Yes, I feel that way after all of these, that we could go on much longer, but really appreciate the valuable insight that each of you brought, and also your leadership, Dr. Patel. Before we close, I just wanted to share that if you are a family on the call who is interested in having your child meet other kids who can relate, and to build that community and that is coping, we will be enrolling for our summer cohort. And so the dates are on the calendar. We also have more upcoming webinars, including centering the experience of AAPI families, families living in rural communities and rare cancers. So if that speaks to someone that you know or love, we would welcome you at that conversation as well. The recording will be available on YouTube, as well as many of our previous webinars and panels are there as well. And then stay involved with us and all of these other organizations. You're going to get the PDF of this slide deck, so you'll have information about Fight Colorectal Cancer, Man Up to Cancer, and Colorectal Cancer Alliance. We are so grateful for our partners in this program, and grateful to all of you showing up every day as a parent, caregiver, child, family member, fighting and living with colorectal cancer. Thank you for this conversation, and thank you for your time. And we will stay in touch.